Hey guys, welcome back to the show, and on this episode I'm going to be talking about a movie that is supposed to be pretty wild. And going just based off of the poster and the title, no one could blame you for assuming that the movie must be pretty wild. I mean, just look at all this action. You got chicks in bikinis with laser guns. What's that, a two-headed astronaut? Look at all the fighting and shooting and explosions in space. That looks awesome. I guess this must be the four-armed strangler. Down here is a guy collecting tiny people as dolls. Okay. And I don't know what the deal is with this guy, the guy with the cape, but I'm sure he's got to be important in some way. So yeah, I bet you just can't wait for me to show you how wild this movie is, so let's get right to it. The film opens with a shot of a miniature city of the future, and when I say miniature, I don't mean convincingly small, I mean you can practically see the price tags from the hobby shop still dangling off the rocket models. The score accompanying this is a masterwork of unease, metallic hums, industrial clanking, and what sounds like someone rhythmically tapping a wrench against a filing cabinet. It's less film soundtrack and more noises my refrigerator makes at 3 a.m. when I'm alone and questioning my life choices. So they hit the brakes on the spaceship so that the astronauts can fly over to this space station that looks like it's hanging from a very obvious wire. But how do you know a space station wouldn't wobble around like this? Have you ever been to a space station? Probably not. The year, as we're told, is 2015, which was meant to feel impossibly distant in 1966. In the actual 2015, the most advanced technology most people owned was a phone that they used primarily to argue with strangers about stuff that doesn't really matter. This space station is Gamma 1, and inside we're introduced to Dr. Nurmi, and he's in charge of the CBM, Chem Biomed, a research lab that contains transparent display cases filled with dissected human organs arranged like a Whole Foods deli case designed by Hannibal Lecter. Our hero is Commander Mike Halstead, who has the emotional range of a parking meter, and when he visits Dr. Nurmi's lab, the two of them immediately start a pissing contest of such spectacular passive aggression that it should be studied in conflict resolution seminars as an example of what not to do.
I'm a person, not a collection of hunks of meat.
Okay, so that's technically true, but it's also the type of thing you say when you've lost the conversational thread and you just start stating facts about yourself. Anyways, Nurmi launches into his sales pitch about how tissue grafts and organ transplants will create a race of perfect men. Then Halstead grudgingly invites him to dinner, and Nurmi points out they'll probably be eating hunks of meat. This is our villain, folks. A man whose idea of a good time is arranging kidneys in display cases and making meat puns at dinner. Speaking of which, it would suck to have to eat with this guy, but if I had to, I'd at least feel comfortable knowing that it was at my place. There's no chance in hell I would eat over at his place. And I know the chances of him feeding me actual human organs is slim, but I feel like it's not zero, and that would bug me the whole time. Okay, so Nurmi goes on a tour of the space station, and this is when he meets Lieutenant Connie Gomez, Gamma 1's Communications and Control Officer, which sounds important until you realize her primary function in this film is to get drunk, get annoyed at her boyfriend, and get kidnapped, basically. She's introduced to us in the station gymnasium, where she is teaching a judo class to several officers. And Nurmi watches Connie's judo demonstration with an expression that can only be described as a man mentally adding someone to his shopping cart. Also, among her students is Lieutenant Jake Jackowitz, played by a 23-year-old Franco Nero. Yes, that Franco Nero. A man who would play Django, star in Camelot, appear in Die Hard 2, and show up in John Wick Chapter 2. But before all of that, he was here, in Wild Wild Planet, getting thrown on his back by Lisa Gastoni. Twice. Why am I bringing this up? Well, how often do you get to see a future international film star get ragdolled across a gym mat in a low-budget Italian sci-fi movie? Not that often. Anyways, Nurmi invites her to join him and Halstead for dinner. And, I mean, if it wasn't clear that this guy is the villain, it should be now. Like, inviting someone to a dinner that you were invited to? Who are you to invite someone else? You don't know if they were invited or not. You don't know if they're welcome. Plus, that turtleneck, I mean, this guy's gotta be stopped. The dinner scene aboard Gamma 1 is where Wild Wild Planet reveals its secret identity as a workplace romantic drama that accidentally wandered into a science fiction film and couldn't find the exit. Nurmi is dancing with Connie and then invites her to visit his experimental facility on the planet Delphus. He frames it as a lovely vacation getaway, which it's clearly not going to be. I mean, this guy is evil. Who knows what he's got going on at that experimental facility? It's gotta be gross. I mean, this guy plays around with human organs as a hobby. Connie is getting hammered and growing visibly furious with her boyfriend, Commander Halstead, and starts venting to Nurmi, the organ-harvesting megalomaniac, about how her boyfriend treats her like one of the boys. This is a decision roughly on par with complaining about your landlord to the guy who just offered you a great deal on a timeshare in hell. We now arrive at what is, without question, the single most memorably insane element of Wild Wild Planet, and in a film where the competition for that title is fierce. I mean, look at this poster. It's promised a lot. So basically what's happening is people across Earth have been vanishing. So-called important people, scientists, generals, world leaders. Nobody knows how, but the film now shows us, and what we will see will haunt us forever. The abduction teams work in pairs. A glamorous woman, tall hair, tall boots, heavy makeup, looking like a Bond girl who got lost on the way to a better movie, accompanied by a tall, bald man in dark sunglasses and a long black trench coat. The woman approaches the target and distracts them. Then the bald man steps up behind the victim and, there really is no dignified way to describe this, opens his trench coat wide, wraps it around the victim, and the victim disappears. Yes, the primary mode of villainy in this movie is aggressive flashing. Men in slick black trench coats striding up to unsuspecting citizens and spreading their coats open to envelop them. The visual is so spectacularly loaded with unintended meaning that if you described it to someone who hadn't seen the film, they would assume you were making it up. And it's especially jarring because the first time we see it, they're doing it to a kid. So you're probably wondering what's going on here. Well, whenever one of these bald guys abducts someone into his trench coat, they get shrunken down to the size of a doll and then get put in a case so that they can be transported to Dr. Nurmi's facility to be used as part of his eugenics program. Okay, so later they try it on this guy, Dr. Freid, but the abduction goes wrong and the process gets interrupted by Dr. Freid's granddaughter, leaving him roughly half his normal size. He's still wearing his full-grown man clothes, which now hang off of him like a child wearing his father's suit to a job interview. And he falls into a deep coma, which quite frankly is the most reasonable response anyone has to anything in this movie. Honestly, this scene is actually really funny, and the film treats it with such deadly seriousness, which only makes it funnier. So now the mission's all screwed up. They botched it. So the granddaughter's gotta go, and so does the bald man, and suddenly he's turned into nothing. Again, I'm gonna tell you what's going on here. The female agent has a brooch on her coat, which I guess contains a chemical compound that dissolves human tissue instantly, because of course it does. In the future, women's accessories double as chemical weapons. So the next time someone tells you that fashion isn't functional, just remember that in Wild Wild Planet, a decorative pin can liquefy a man. Okay, so at one point there's a car chase with one of the bald guys that begins in broad daylight, and through a continuity error so brazen it qualifies as performance art, suddenly concludes at night. Just look at this. This is how it's actually cut. The chase car goes off an embankment, shown via an obvious miniature model on what is clearly a model railroad scale road, complete with a huge explosion that suggests the car was somehow carrying a full tank of jet fuel. Anyways, this is when they find a briefcase containing doll-sized people with their nipples still intact. Okay, so there's a scene where they tell Halstead that they have the body of one of the bald guys.
No papers and no identification. No money either.
Yeah, a complete nobody. And to make it worse, he was poor. So we couldn't even get any money off of him. Like, what a loser. So they start poking around and find that the body has 4 arms and cat-like eyes and appears to have been assembled from grafted body parts, like some kind of biological Build-A-Bear. Halstead figures that Nurmi is involved somehow because, he likes weird stuff with body parts. But Nurmi has already left. So Halstead barges into the apartment of Nurmi's agents, complete with a bookshelf that doesn't seem very practical, but what do I know? And so begins one of the funniest fight scenes I've seen in a long time. You've got people throwing themselves through the air, and hey, how about this move? Yes, pushing the arm down, that usually works. I have to say though, the fight choreography might be better than anything else in the film, which says less about the fight and more about everything else. Anyways, eventually the girls get taken away, and I guess sitting on that dumbass bookshelf, they had a book with a list of all of the victims with their names checked off. And I would just like to note that these supposedly elite secret agents kept incriminating documents just lying around their apartment. Not in a safe, not in code, just on surfaces. The future's most dangerous covert operatives apparently use the same filing system as a college student. There's a scene where Connie arrives on Delphus and she gets to see the clone factory where the 4-armed bald goons are crated up and shipped to Earth, which raises the logistical question of how you ship these guys through interplanetary customs without anyone noticing. The answer is apparently easily, because nobody in this universe seems to check briefcases or ask follow-up questions. I mean, that's how they're able to transport the mini people off of Earth. Okay, so Connie is shown to her living quarters. Apparently she's not a fan of the decor. And then suddenly she opens the door to the shower and it starts pouring blood. And there seems to be absolutely no reason for this. It adds nothing to the plot. It advances no character arc. It is a shower full of blood, and the movie treats it like a Zillow listing. 3-bedroom, 2 baths, 1 blood shower. Great natural light. Anyways, Halstead, having figured out that Nurmi is behind the kidnappings and that Connie is in danger, does what any rational military commander would do. He physically tries to strangle the truth out of Nurmi. This goes about as well as workplace assaults typically do. His superiors are horrified and he is confined to quarters, which is the space military equivalent of being sent to your room. Anyways, he sends a message to his loyal officers, Jake and Ken, to break him out of there. So they arrive in their spaceship, which has a ladder that he can use to climb aboard. And honestly, it's very tempting to make a joke about the miniatures, but they do help to make the movie entertaining. So Halstead and the boys find the mother lode in terms of evidence that Nurmi is a bad guy, and Halstead starts killing the bad guys with his flame gun, even though these guys die pretty easily. And I have to say, this is all it takes to kill them. And as for the bad guys, I gotta ask, what was the plan here? What's the attack plan? Just run into them? Halstead assembles a rescue force and they blast off for Delphus in a ship that is, and I say this with the utmost affection, one of the most wonderfully primitive spacecraft models ever committed to film. This thing looks like it was built from scraps of cardboard and a prayer. But when the rescue force arrives at Delphus, Nurmi is ready for them. These guys are captured and trapped inside a box as soon as they set foot on the planet. Nurmi basically turns into a Bond villain and tells Halstead that before he kills him, he's gonna give him a tour of the place. I always found this funny when the bad guy is like, I'm gonna kill you, but first I'm gonna tell you everything I'm going to do, because you having the details of my evil plan satisfies me for some reason. First is the reconstitution area, where tanning bed-like devices restore the shrunken victims to full size. So the bad guys shrink people, transport them in suitcases, and then unshrink them at the destination. And I don't really understand why they're doing this. I mean, they're transporting the 4-armed clones without any problem. Can't you just use the same method for transporting these people? That way, you don't even really need an army of clones. Just a bottle of ether and a rag and you're good. At one point, Nurmi shows him the rejection room, which contains Nurmi's failed experiments, mutant rejects and discarded test subjects who look like they wandered in from a Lovecraft adaptation running on half the budget of a Lovecraft adaptation that already had no budget. These poor souls shuffle and moan in what the film clearly intends as horror, but plays more like a very depressing petting zoo. There's also the Hall of Mirrors. Nurmi leads Halstead through a literal Hall of Mirrors while drawing some kind of philosophical analogy between his work and distorted reflections. This metaphor makes approximately zero sense, which is consistent with everything else about this sequence. Next is a room where men are locked in rotating cylindrical capsules with only their heads sticking out, slowly spinning around and around like rotisserie chickens at a very sad supermarket. This is supposedly space conditioning, but it looks less like advanced scientific experimentation and more like a dystopian version of the teacups ride at Disney World. Then he's like, hey, check it out. This is the computer that controls everything. It's the most complex machine ever constructed, even though it looks like crap.
With this and from here, I control life and death.
And not just life and death, it controls everything, pretty much anything I want it to. I'm basically God with this computer because it has 100 megabytes of memory. Something you've probably never even heard of, because it's the future. Yeah, I had it order me a pizza last night, and it took 9 hours to get here. But still, it worked. Just had to order it in the morning, first thing. So it's still really cool. At one point, he reveals his master plan to Halstead. He's like, hey, check this out, loser. Yeah, that's your girlfriend, Connie, and I'm going to merge my body with hers. So we're going to be like one person. Yeah, that's got to suck for you. Yes, he's creating a race of genetically superior, potentially immortal humans through a process he calls total fusion, the surgical merging of a man and woman into one body, like a biological 2-for-1 deal. Furthermore, the female agents who were luring victims throughout the film, they were already merged beings. Two people fused into one body. That's why they occasionally refer to themselves as we.
It might seem the work of a sick mind. Nevertheless, I've worked in my own way for the good of humanity.
This is the villain equivalent of, I'm not a monster, I'm a visionary. Except the vision is, what if I surgically fused myself to my girlfriend? Well, that way she could never leave. So let's review the complete 10-step Nurmi business plan. 1. Build organ display cases. 2. Create 4-armed bald clone army. 3. Deploy glamorous female agents. 4. Shrink important people using trenchcoat technology. 5. Transport shrunken people in briefcases. 6. Unshrink them on Delphus. 7. Harvest their organs and body parts. 8. Dump leftovers in a lake. 9. Surgically merge yourself with your kidnapping victim into one being. And finally 10. Call this working for the good of humanity. I have encountered some convoluted villain plans in my lifetime, but this is the only one that includes shrinking technology, a cloning facility, an interplanetary body parts pipeline, and couples surgery. It's like if Lex Luthor's plan to defeat Superman involved opening up a Jamba Juice franchise. Technically, you could see how one step leads to the next, but at some point you gotta wonder if anybody actually reviewed the flowchart. Of course, Halstead escapes, and there's a huge fight, and the bad guys are just getting their asses handed to them, which makes you wonder why Nurmi didn't use some of his 4-armed clones with the magic trench coats as security. I mean, seems like that would have been an advantage, but whatever. During the one-on-one fight between Halstead and Nurmi, they damage the supercomputer controlling the entire subterranean complex. And the supercomputer is essentially the load-bearing wall of the entire operation. Destroy the computer, destroy everything. Which really sucks. I mean, this guy built his entire world-changing eugenics empire on what appears to be a single point of failure. No backup servers, no redundancy. This man can surgically fuse two humans into one being, but he can't set up a raid array. Back on Earth, everyone gathers around a swimming pool as if the events of the previous 90 minutes were a mild inconvenience rather than an interplanetary nightmare involving organ harvesting, human miniaturization, and attempted species fusion. And here, we also have Dr. Freid, the half-shrunken scientist from the botched abduction earlier in the film. He's still half-sized, permanently. The shrinking was irreversible. This is the most psychologically fascinating moment in the entire movie. This man was ambushed by a bald exhibitionist, partially compressed to half his dimensions, spent most of the movie in a coma, and is now at a pool party. Oh yeah, and his granddaughter got murdered as well. Can't forget about that. Either this man has achieved a level of zen that Buddhist monks spend decades pursuing, or the trauma hasn't hit yet, and this pool party is about to get very dark very fast. Halstead immediately offends Connie again by being a thoughtless oaf, but then he kisses her and she melts into his arms, because this is 1966, and the solution to every romantic conflict is a sufficiently aggressive makeout session. Wait, that's it? Nobody's going to address the half-man at the pool? No government investigation into the interplanetary organ trafficking ring? No therapy for Connie, who was nearly surgically fused with the madman? No debrief? No, pool party. Everyone who is not dissolved by a brooch or drowned in a lake of cranberry juice is fine. Now, this film was one of 4 films shot consecutively as part of the Gamma 1 series of movies. The films were originally made for television, but MGM was apparently so impressed, or so bewildered, that they gave them theatrical releases. The English title was changed from the literal Italian translation, Criminals of the Galaxy, to The Wild Wild Planet, to capitalize on the popularity of the TV show The Wild Wild West. This is the 1960s equivalent of naming your movie Avengers of the Galaxy and hoping that nobody notices it's actually about insurance fraud. I should also mention the dialogue, because this movie is full of hilarious lines. Highlights include,
"You helium head."
a future insult so magnificently nonsensical that I kinda want it on a t-shirt. And also, this one might be my favorite.
That's the wildest, most way out I ever heard.
A sentence that is not, grammatically speaking, finished. Also, you're probably wondering about that guy on the poster with the cape. Yeah, he turned out to be no one important at all. He's basically a performer in this show that they went to go see at one point. It's kind of like a space version of Cirque du Soleil, a really low-budget space version of Cirque du Soleil. Like, no budget. I give Wild Wild Planet my highest possible recommendation. Not as a good movie, but as an essential one. It is a film that must be experienced, ideally with friends, ideally with beverages, and ideally with the understanding that what you are about to witness will change the way you look at trench coats forever. I want to thank all of my supporters on Buy Me a Coffee, Patreon, and my YouTube channel members. I want to thank all of you for tuning in, but that's pretty much it for this one, and I'll see you all next time. I tried what we call downloading music on it the other day. Technically, well, we like to call it sharing, and it kind of screwed up the computer for a few hours. I had to get the guys to fix it, but still, it was cool. I got to hear the first 30 seconds of a futuristic band, my favorite futuristic band, Stelica. Like, I can actually turn the lights on and off whenever I want. I call it I call the computer Carrie. Watch this. Hey Carrie, turn the lights off. Sometimes it just, sometimes it doesn't register. It's just, hey Carrie, turn the lights off. Hey Carrie, noises my refrigerator makes at 3 a.m. when I'm alone and questioning my life choices. My fridge actually does make weird noises in the middle of the night. Makes them throughout the day too. Should probably get a new fridge. But it still works. And, it's paid.